Speak louder. So good evening and welcome to the proceedings of the Grand Rapids Public Schools Board of Education. This evening is Monday, July 19. Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Lewis, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Davis?
Here.
Dr. Flores?
Present.
Ms. Grant?
Here.
Ms. Lewis here. Reverend Matias?
Here.
Mr. Ross?
Here.
Mrs. Williams? Excused.
Excused.
Dr. Baker excused. President Shockey
Here.
here. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion for approval of the agenda this evening?
So move.
Support. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We do not have any celebrations on the agenda tonight, so we will proceed to public comment for board agenda items. Do we have any for board agenda items? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, great. So we have 5 individuals wishing to give public comment on board agenda items for this evening. So I will welcome forward Marta Johnson. Marta, please join us. Oh, sure, sure. Well, we will be voting to approve it, so it is an agenda item if you prefer to come forward now on the ESSER budget. So you did the right thing. Yeah, you're great. Yes. Before we begin, we'll read you the public comment rules. You're welcome to sit at the board table, yes. Ms. Lewis will read those to you.
Our board assistant will collect the announcements for submission. Individuals be invited one at a time to the speaker's table to address the board during the designated public comment agenda time. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. You will need to state your full name before providing your comment. You will then start the timer at the beginning of your public comment time and provide you with one notice by flagging a red card indicating 1 minute remains. You will need to complete your commitment time upon being notified that 3 minutes have passed. Board members do not respond to public comments. Concerns will be brought to the attention of the appropriate staff. We value your input and thank you for sharing. Since I don't have a red card, I will just wave this thing.
You can just, be like,
What? Oh,
oh, there it is.
Blended in.
Julia's way ahead of us, yeah. Okay.
All right, welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Marta Johnson. I'm a parent of a GRPS student. I've also been actively involved in what our neighborhood school is, Campus Elementary, and have had some hands-on experience with issues in our school district, especially equity-related issues. I think also as a parent of someone that, almost died from blood clots all over her body and has congenital heart disease and many other medical issues, she's at high risk for complications if she gets COVID. So I'm here because I want to make sure that every student has a safe learning environment. I think we should have publicly accessible data on all of the testings that have been done. I don't know where to access that, and I'm a pretty inquisitive person. I think every parent should have access to that, and we should be reaching out and making sure that every parent knows the air quality in their child's school. I'd like to see a goal put forth for all of our schools to have high quality air plans in the sense of air should be able to be recirculated at least 4 to 6 times an hour. That's a standard and that's been set out there for safe learning environments, and MER 15 is the kind of the gold standard for that we should target for all of our schools. Furthermore, we should have a safe eating environment. When kids are opening their mouths to put food in it, that's going to be a time when COVID and other diseases can spread. We're still in the midst of a pandemic, And the Delta variant is just starting to emerge in pretty scary ways, especially for unvaccinated, which includes all of our 12 and under students. So I urge you to consider having outdoor safe eating areas and prioritizing that for this fall so that we can send our kids to school having that confidence that every school is safe for our kids to learn in and every school is safe for our kids to exist in if they have to, eat or play or that sort of thing. The other thing that I want to urge you is, and I think you might have picked up on this, I would like to urge the board to have more transparency around everything that happens. It's really difficult to find these meetings. There were 2 different locations that were posted for this meeting and the meeting previously, and it would be great to have a publicly accessible calendar where people can add it to their calendars. There are common programs that can be used for this, but it's really difficult to even know what's being decided or how to be part of that conversation when a lot of this information isn't accessible to parents. So I just continue to urge you to pursue transparency, to pursue equity, and to make sure that we're having a safe learning environment, because I don't see that reflected in what our plans and programs are right now. And I don't know if that can be resolved at this meeting, but I just continue to urge the board to seek out creating safe space for kids, especially those that are at high risk, which is really in every single school building. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, next I'd like to welcome forward Alexa, is it Oat? Hot? Adi, thank you. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. My name is Alexa Adi. I have 3 children at Grand Rapids Montessori. So I'm coming here as a concerned parent. I know the last year has been very difficult for everyone. GRPS lost 833 students last year, so over $1 million. If we were to change schools for my 3 kids, that's $65,000. That's going away with all the different budget increases and things. My big concern right now, though there's a lot of concerns. We've all seen national news and all sorts of different things going on with school boards and school board meetings. My kids are really concerned about masks. I have a 4-year-old and I have a 7-year-old and I have a 9-year-old. And my 2 little ones have a lot of trouble with masks. Understanding what the teachers are saying, understanding people's facial cues. 150 schools in Michigan, school districts, have come out and said they're not requiring masks on their students. They're leaving it up to the parents' choice. And that includes Caledonia, Forest Hills, my list, Rockford, Jenison, Hudsonville, Granville, Zeeland, Thornapple, Kellogg, among many others. So I urge GRPS to have no mask requirement, no vaccine requirements, no vaccine promotions for students, and no student and athlete testing.
Thank you very much for your comment this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, next, may we welcome forward Rachel Westerhoff. Rachel.
I did the same thing. I filled that out because I thought it was last meeting. So hello all.
Hello.
But there's definitely, I can reiterate some of my points. Rachel Westerhoff. I have a son in GRPS. So we partnered with GRPS early on in his education to be part of the neighborhood school in my neighborhood. And it was a profoundly disappointing experience. The school was lacking in resources from technical to human. And when we requested more, the answer was always volunteers, right? Find the parents, create a parent group, get more parents involved. And then that became segregated. It became like the white parents that were all brought in by GRPS, and then the parents of the kids that were already there, that were already part of the school. There was no way of really integrating the 2 groups. It was just so frustrating to see these kids just left behind. I put my son into a different GRPS school, and he was at the top of his class at his neighborhood school, and he had so much catch up at the beginning of the year. We had to work really hard to get him there. A lot of that was because he was so bright, they would just put him on a computer so that they could help the other children in the class. Because if you think about it, 1 teacher, 30 students, if 18 of them need one-on-one help, the kid who's got it all done already, what else are you going to do with them, right? It was just so heartbreaking to watch this. I love public school. I want it to succeed, and I wanted it to succeed for my son, and I'm still trying to figure out how we can make it work, right? So I just want to encourage you guys to consider those neighborhood schools. Consider that there were so many years that we just weren't giving them the resources that they needed because the loudest voices came from elsewhere, right? And so we need to make sure that we get them to, as you talked about, equity, that these students all have the same playing field that they're jumping off of. That's incredibly important to me. So I thank you for what you're doing, and yeah, I hope you look into that more.
All right, thank you so much for your comment.
Thank you.
All right, Mary Bowens, welcome. No, that's all right. Take your time.
Good evening, President Shadke, Superintendent Roby, and board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the ESSER fund spending. Let me start with my vision of what a school district should be doing. Number one, educating children. And number two, being good stewards of the school property in which we educate those students. I see a lot of money on the ESSER list being spent on many instructional resources, which is wonderful. The variety is broad with tutoring, summer school, libraries, multicultural materials, and subject matter curriculums and supplies. But I would suggest that some of that money be spent on purchasing the materials that teachers spend out of their own pockets, the things they need to make their rooms engaging and inviting to students. I didn't see that on the list. I must admit that many of these items do not have an adequate description to be able to tell what is actually being purchased, which we heard about in the last meeting, and that was helpful to understand that this was a broad list of items. So hopefully these items that we do purchase would be disseminated to the appropriate grade levels or secondary departments to be put to their best use. Facilities are another area that should be a priority for GRPS. The list of improvements I expect is in addition to the already scheduled improvements from bond monies. Many of our teachers are hoping for these improvements and that they will upgrade their learning environment for their students and make sure that buildings have equitable HVAC, roofs that don't leak, access to elevators, accessibility to the buildings, which will reduce the divide between the two-tiered system in GRPS. This is an exciting list of purchases using money that has to be spent. My wish is that the bulk of the purchases end up reaching and impacting the student's education directly. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, and our last individual for board agenda items is Caitlin Oliver. Caitlin, welcome.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Oliver, and I am a school social worker currently assigned to Harrison Park. This will be my 4th school year with GRPS, 6th overall. I have previously worked at Ottawa Hills, Alger, East Leonard, and Museum Middle School. I have been a union rep for 2 years now, and this fall I will be filling the role of the ancillary rep for the GREA Executive Board. In my free time, I'm also on the Board of Trustees for the Kent District Library. I tell you all this so you understand that I've been around a minute and I know what I'm talking about. One of the most painful aspects of the plan for the allotment of funds is the lack of funds used for staff. This allocation includes staffing for instructional coaches, but not for staff who work directly with students. There's a nationwide teacher shortage going on, and GRPS has a high turnover rate. I can find no evidence that there is any concern regarding our staffing needs for teachers, custodians, paras, or anyone who is school-based. Friendly reminder that contract negotiations for GRA staff salary will start up soon. I'm excited to see what we can afford to pay teachers since we have freed up $82,166,674 to use on other priorities. This fall, we learned that the board proposed the bond proposal that was passed a few years back to fund building upgrades, fixes, and maintenance has been, let's just say the money hasn't been used as promised. And yet within this wonderful gift of funding, we're still not addressing the continued problems in many of our buildings. Remember those ventilation reports? Only a handful of schools are getting the fixes they need. But security really needs new Ford Explorers. That'll help our kids graduate. Now, I'm not one to just complain and point out flaws. Nay, as a social worker, I am solution-focused. I've heard from my administration before that they are perplexed by specifics, so to avoid confusion, let me keep my solution broad. If we are not using any of the money for teachers, staff bonuses, or incentives, then here is my suggestion. This fall, the Return to Learn plan was put completely upon building principals to create their own plans for how the building ran in both hybrid and full face-to-face instruction. Many would say that this was unfair to put so much pressure on principals, but it also showed a great deal of trust in our building administration. I think we should continue to show them how much we trust them and allow them to continue the responsibility we thrust upon them before. Looking at just ESSR funds, the approximately our student body district-wide of 15,000, that works out to a little more than 5,000 per student. A large building with, say, 600 students would get $3 million to use as they need, whether that's fixing their playground, upgrading their tech, or subscribing to Mystery Science. If this is in fact approved tonight as the district's plan to use these funds, understand that you're saying that we have enough money for everything else we need. This is a life raft that we are being given, and we're using it on things that are way higher on the Maslow hierarchy of needs than the level we've been functioning at for years. Our focus needs to be on what helps students the most, and that's retaining staff and having safe buildings. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you to everyone who gave public comment. Okay, we'll move on our agenda now to our reports. The first is our secretary's report. Ms. Lewis.
Yes, committee meeting schedule. The City Board Liaison Committee will be meeting on Wednesday, July 21st at 2 p.m. at the GRPS University located on Fuller. Finance Committee will be meeting Wednesday, August 4th at 5:30 at the Franklin campus. And the Academic Achievement Committee will be meeting on Wednesday, August 4th at 4:30 at the Franklin campus.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lewis. We'll move on to our Finance Committee report. Reverend Matias.
I was paying attention to something else. I apologize. So we do have some consent agendas that are going to be presented to us, and certainly the ESSER information. And so that's all I have to say.
Okay, great. Thank you, Reverend Matias. Move on to our superintendent's report. Dr. Roby.
Good evening, everyone. So we are in the last week of summer school. Our summer school program will end on Thursday of this week. We look forward to sharing some updates related to our high school students, specifically on how they've completed their coursework, and some late summer graduates from 2021. We are also prepping for the opening of the school year, which will include expanding communications related to mask, vaccinations, screeners, and then what we're doing with athletics and making sure that that's very clearly communicated to our families, and wanting to make sure that people have that information by the first week in August. That's our goal, to do that. Mr. Helmholt will do the remaining presentations this evening, which include the foundation, GRPS Foundation update, strategic planning update, and then also a quick non-homestead millage update.
Dr. Roby, President Shockey, members of the board. Also wanted to kind of build off the last comment about how soon we're eager to communicate about plans for the fall. We learned recently that the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services is expected to put new guidance for return to school. That's not going to come out till the end of this month. So we are eagerly awaiting that, as we've consistently followed their guidance, but we know that we are prepared and will communicate as quickly as possible. GRPS Foundation update. Today was a big day. We had our big announcement of the Crosstown Throwdown, the largest citywide reunion, and this is all part of our 150th anniversary. Tickets are free, but we are asking individuals to pre-register, as we fully anticipate this will be a sellout crowd of more than 6,000. In a normal year, we're at 3,000-4,000, and if we're bringing back alumni and the level of excitement, we really want to encourage individuals to pre-register and get their tickets today. And their sponsorship opportunities. So we're going to challenge, I'm going to challenge my class of 93 at Union to buy a banner, and let's make sure we're represented. But there are a number of banners that are up for sponsorship for local businesses, individuals, classes of, schools, anyone who wants to be part of it. This will be a fundraiser for the GRPS Foundation. The foundation is working closely with us, and their board's out raising money, selling sponsorships. So if you want more, you can go to our website at grps.org under news and events. But the link to register and sponsorship is on the GRPS Foundation website, which is grpsf.org. Secondly, strategic planning update. We have another packed couple days with Martha Greenway coming in town this Wednesday and Thursday. That includes a meeting with business leaders, neighborhood associations, higher education, municipal leaders, presentation at the city school liaison, Kent School Service Network staff, members of our equity team. And then you'll also see another round of students, our community advocates who've been working so closely with us. Erica, thank you. I'm going to call you out because you're here. But Erica and Raven and others have continued to work closely alongside us to bring recommendations. So we're targeting English learner students as well as at-risk youth who are participating in this focus group. We have an affordable housing focus group, and then some other community leaders that were recommended as well. So full couple days strategic planning. This is going to really conclude kind of phase one of this three-phase iterative process. The next big shift will be beginning to plan for the September 14th design session, which will likely have about 100 individuals who will be invited to participate in a half-day long session. That will then come back to the board for a preliminary review and vote on kind of the framework on the September 20th. And then we're going to go back out and do a whole nother round of engagement from focus groups, small group, large group meetings, and much more. We did get the results of the survey. We ended up having nearly 1,400 survey responses. That was 575 parents, 325 employees, 265 students, 268 community members. And we had 16 completed in Spanish, 5 in Kinyarwanda, and 4 in Swahili. So, and there will likely be another round of surveys, but this was just the initial assessment phase, and then we'll shift into phase 2 here with more details to come. Third item, non-homestead millage. Just want to remind everyone that we have a big election. The non-homestead millage proposal is on the August 3rd ballot. This is not a new tax. This is something the voters have voted on consistently since 1994, really, when Proposal A came into effect. This is not a tax increase because it can't be. It's capped at 18 mills. This would protect against a Headley rollback when property values are skyrocketing the way that they are. This rolls it back where we could lose upwards of $250,000 annually if we do not have this approved by voters, which would allow us to maintain the current levy, which has been the same current levy for really the better part of 3 decades, at 18 mills for non-homestead. So this is not a tax on homeowners. This is a tax on non-homestead property, industrial, commercial, and other non-homestead property. So the vast majority of the voters, this is not even on their tax bills. More information is at our website, grps.org/millage. That's all I have.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Helmholtz? Anyone? If you have not responded to Hillary from Greenway Strategy Group, she is working to have one-on-one board interviews, so please make sure that you reach out to her. She sent some options for us to have those interviews. I had mine today with Martha Greenway, so thank you, board colleagues, for having those one-on-one conversations. Okay, thank you, John.
Thanks.
Okay, we have 2 action items this evening. The first is our ESSER 2 and 3 investment plan. I want to thank those of you who came out in the meeting prior to this one to give public comment and dialogue about how we hope to spend these ESSER 2 and 3 dollars. I guess I'll just give a few minutes for board reflection on what we heard. And I'll start, of course. So the themes for me that I really heard from all of you that gave comment were commitment to transparency, and we certainly agree. A commitment to sharing the details. We gave you a high-level overview of where we think we can make these investments, but you want to know more specifics. And so in the weeks to come, as we pass our first look at this budget, we will commit to providing those details to you, of course. Let's see. Exploration of a participatory budget, and just commitment to the classroom and to students. So colleagues, I'll open it up for a little bit, just talk about what you heard, and then we can move into a vote on tonight's budget.
No, what aside was, I think, there are a lot of things that we know that many of us want to do, would like to do, and to some degree, we think, I think we all feel like with a windfall of money, we should do a lot of different things. I guess the side was just thinking about the sort of the decision making and the sort of no perfect sort of way to do any of this. I think one of the biggest thing that maybe resonated with me is I think the reality is we all do want to take better financial care of pretty much everyone who gets a check from GRPS, and to some degree it seems like maybe we could figure out a way to do that with this, but the real cautionary tale is again getting locked into something that we may not be able to sustain down the road. And then what does that look like? Is that really taking care of people right now? Will that really be the peril of the district in a few years when we don't have the dollars to sustain that type of thing? So I guess what I'm really just kind of thinking aloud and maybe thinking aloud to anyone who offered ideas along those lines. And I guess to know that that probably resonates with everyone sitting up here. But it's a challenging thing to figure out. I did like that idea of participatory budgeting that someone mentioned. I like the idea of exploring that for sure, because I do think we do want our community to continue to be engaged. We want a partnership, and maybe some ownership of some earmarked dollars may go a long way in helping us to nurture that type of spirit.
Thank you.
The things that you mentioned were things that I had written down as well. And also a comment that stood out to me is just making sure that we hear some voices that maybe aren't a part of a lot of the conversations. So that's something I'd just kind of like to highlight. But for me, I think it was a successful night hearing from some of the public. And I'm hopeful that as we continue with the strategic planning process, that knowing that this budget can be amended and certainly will throughout this project process, I think the strategic plan and the budget will have to flow together. And so that's something that will also help as we move forward.
Yeah, so I guess for me, anytime we talk about dollars that we are given as a district, I completely understand when our community and especially our staff is thinking of the way that we should use them as if there are no barriers. And so it hurts to sometimes hear the need that we have, and knowing that my colleagues agree there are absolute necessities that we need to do, and one of those top priorities being paying our staff more. But a lot of times these buckets aren't unlimited where we can do anything that we want. And so sometimes that's the gap that I see, and I know that it's not always as clear to other people about that. And so sometimes I just want to be able to say, like, if we could use funds any way we wanted to, but whenever we're given funds, they come with a lot of guidelines. And so when I hear people say, like, you have this windfall of money, like, we're given very clear guidelines of how we have to use it. And then for dollars like this, we're also, when people are like, if you're spending this money on this, then you have extra money. And unfortunately, we're not funded enough. And sometimes I don't hear that clearly said. And so I want to take this time today to say this. We're not replacing money. It's money that we didn't have. And so it's very unfortunate, because it's like, how don't we have money for these things? But a lot of those things would not have happened if these funds weren't given to us this one time. And so that's something that I always want to say. I just want to be really clear for me, myself, but I know from conversations with my colleagues, a lot of times it feels like people are making comment as if we're on two different sides from each other. And I can say a lot of times I know that my colleagues and myself, we're not enemies. We're not perfect. We're absolutely human beings, but we're also not enemies, and it's not us versus parents or us versus staff, because a lot of times our hearts are going out like, I agree with the things that are being said. And so a lot of times I don't say that, because it's hard to explain and people will judge however it comes, but I wanted to take that moment to say that today. There are still needs, and I completely hear where people are coming from, especially our staff, and I just want to share that.
I think that something was said earlier this evening about if we want to have quality education, then we have to attract and retain the very best staff that we can. And to that end, then we need to, and I believe everyone on this board feels the same way, that our staff, our support staff, anyone who works for the district deserves much more money than they're making now. If I know everyone on this board, if we had a way that we could say, oh, okay, we got all kinds of money, you would be the first ones we give it to. But unfortunately, like Ms. Grant said, we're not always allowed to do that, but I do want the employees to know that I and my fellow board members support you 100%.
Anyone else?
I think we heard quite a few suggestions that have definitely a lot of insight, perspective from parents and from staff, and I think that we ought to take those seriously. I know that because of the urgency of getting this ESSER funding approved, that we had limitations in terms of how much outreach and input that we could solicit. But I think that going forward, we ought to perhaps solicit more input, because that input and ideas are certainly what shape community support. And we want and we need community support. And that whole idea of recruitment and retention, the opportunity that we have right now before us is important, and we ought to make sure that we have a thrust in that area. Likewise, I think that where I may differ in opinion is that we have an opportunity to target learning loss, and we should do everything within our power to assemble the resources and direct resources to ensuring that we have enough people to deal with the learning loss that our children have experienced during this pandemic. And whether that means hiring people on a temporary or seasonal basis, I support that. I know this budget is limited in that, but we ought to look at more resources. And again, whether they're limited in terms of scope and time period that we hire these employees, I really think we ought to. Whether they're tutors or they're instructional support staff that we hire temporarily, I think we need to do that in order to ensure that our children are being brought up to par where they need to be academically. So I also support the idea that we ought to be spending some money on making our classrooms attractive. Teachers do put out a lot of their financial resources, and I think that would be a great thing to do and very easy for us to accomplish in this budget. So I support our efforts. I'm certainly going to vote for this, and we'll go forward, and we'll keep equity and equality on our radar.
I heard about 6 different, if you will, themes prior. One of the first ones were the HVAC and that arena of air quality and air safety, and some of this money that has, if you will, been given us is a once in a lifetime opportunity for our district. The other thing that I heard was a theme of left behind schools or neighborhood schools and the arena around there. The third I heard was retention of staff, what's being done there, participatory budgeting and the possibility of the district opening itself up to the public and hearing how it may direct the funds. The other was issues of preschool affordability. We know as parents who have kids, young kids, I have older kids now, but it's sometimes very difficult to make that choice of preschool and then finding one that is adequate and safe. And so that's important. The other was the social emotional or social workers. I know that social workers in the public schools are typically assigned for students with IEPs, and then they get the extra burden of also, because of their licensing, have the capability of doing counseling and those kinds of things, group interventions and whatnot. And so I hope that I heard that theme. The other is, of course, safe buildings, both security-wise, but then also these other arenas. I hope that we as a district, with our eyes open, public hearing, that we come together. I would love to see parents buy into making the public school, this public school in particular, the best that it could be by bringing its kids back, bringing their kids back to our school districts that are in other school districts, and then challenging the school district to not only do better, but then participate in making it better. It's not going to happen unless you put your kids in the schools and then participate. That's what we did. We had our kids in private school, and just prior to middle school, we put 4 of our kids, now they're all college graduates, through the public schools, and it was hard. And so I hope that with this pocket of money, that we make a wholehearted pinch yourself, be alert, motivation to say, I'm going to invest in this public school, both with this money that's been given and some of the other opportunities that we're going after, but also to physically bring yourself and your kids back to the school district, and let's work together. We have a unique opportunity, I think, as a district, and certainly now with a new superintendent at the helm, and then with us actually looking at ourselves for the next 5 to 10 years or so, and really designing ourselves to be different. That's what's ahead of you, school district. And I hope that we can honestly commit ourselves, as I think we here as a board are trying to do, to really, with our eyes open, saying we're going to make this district the best urban district that we can, and hopefully to be a model of what can happen when folks come together. So,
Thank you, colleagues. What is validating about so much of what we heard today are that they are what we are prioritizing in the strategic plan as well. And so, many of the concerns that were brought up are what we are also saying to our planning firm about. This is what matters to us. This is what the next 3 to 5 years need to look like for this district. So know that even if you are missing something in this ESSER budget, we're likely focusing on it in the strategic planning process as well. So we just invite you to continue to stay engaged as we continue that work in tandem with managing the ESSER funds that we've been entrusted with. And the other great piece of news is that there's flexibility in this budget. And so although we've assigned categories, there's still opportunity for us to ebb and flow as we continue to hear more and see the true needs of our students as they return to school. So that is the great news about where we stand today with these funds. All right, colleagues, thank you so much for your feedback. I'll move into the action item and ask for a motion to approve our ESSER 2 and 3 investment plan.
so moved.
Support.
All right, Ms. Lewis, please call the roll.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Ms. Williams absent. Dr. Baker's absent. President Chucky?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you to the many individuals in our district that put together this plan. That is no small effort, so Thank you so much for everything you've done to get us to this point. Next action item is our 21-22 Michigan High School Athletic Association membership resolution. Is there any discussion before we call the vote? All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Support.
Ms. Lewis, please call the roll.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Ms. Williams is absent. Dr. Baker is absent. Ms. Shockey?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item is our consent agenda grouping. Is there any discussion? May I please have a motion for approval?
So move.
Support.
Ms. Lewis, please call the roll.
I think that was the Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Ms. Grant? Yes. Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Ms. Williams is excused. Dr. Baker is excused. Ms. Shockey?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We do not have any discussion items this evening, so we'll move on to public comment for non-agenda items. We do not have any. So we'll move on to superintendent comments. Dr. Roby.
I actually don't have any comments this evening.
Very good. All right, we'll move on to board member comments. Dr. Flores, we'll start with you.
No comment.
Thank you, Ms. Grant.
No comment.
Ms. Lewis.
Okay. Make a correction here. The Finance Committee will be meeting on Monday, July 26th at 5:30 PM at the Franklin Campus Auditorium. That is just a update on something that I
Thank you for
said
that
earlier.
correction. Yes, great.
Thank you, no comment.
Okay, very good. Ms. Davis.
No comment.
All right, Mr. Ross.
No comment.
Reverend Matias.
No comment.
I do not have any comments, so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.